My wife Lisa and I have been married for 8 years. We have a 5-year-old son, Ethan, and up until a few months ago, I thought our marriage was solid. Sure, we had our share of disagreements, but nothing that seemed out of the ordinary. Turns out I was blissfully naive. It started with her phone. Lisa used to leave it lying around like it was just another appliance, but suddenly it became her new appendage. She was constantly texting, smiling at her screen, and locking it the second I walked into the room. One night I joked, "Who's texting you, the president?" And she just said, "Work stuff." Sure, because PowerPoint deadlines are hilarious. Then came the late nights at the office. Lisa works in marketing, and while I respect her job, I don't recall dinner meetings being a standard industry practice 3 times a week. She'd come home smelling like expensive wine and excuses. When I asked, she snapped, "You don't understand how demanding my job is." Well, Lisa, apparently neither do you, since your LinkedIn still says 9 to 5. The real kicker? Our phone bill. We share an account, and while checking it for a possible plan upgrade, I noticed one number popping up more than mine. I'm talking hundreds of texts and calls. A quick search revealed it belonged to Dan, her coworker. Yes, Dan. The same guy who once came over for a BBQ and drank all my beer before complaining it wasn't craft enough. I tried giving her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Dan really needed help with whatever Dan does, but deep down I knew. So I hired a private investigator. It took less than a week to confirm my worst fears. There were photos of them meeting at motels, having dinner, and, wait for it, feeding each other sushi. I mean, I'm no relationship expert, but I'm pretty sure sharing nigiri is the universal symbol for we're screwing. At first I was livid, but instead of confronting her in the heat of the moment, I decided to play the long game. I gathered evidence like I was building a legal case. Photos, screenshots, receipts, even the PI's full report. I didn't just want to confront her, I wanted it to be unforgettable. The perfect opportunity came when Lisa suggested hosting a dinner party with a few friends. On the guest list, Dan and his wife, Michelle. Yes, Dan is married too. It felt almost poetic. I smiled and told her I thought it was a great idea. The night of the party, everyone was in high spirits. Lisa made her signature roast, Dan brought an overpriced bottle of wine, and Michelle chatted about their recent vacation. Meanwhile, I was sitting there, sipping my beer and waiting for my moment like a Bond villain. After dessert, I stood up and said, "Thank you all for coming. Before we wrap up, I have something important to share." Lisa looked confused, but Dan immediately froze, like a deer caught in the headlights. I pulled out a folder and handed it to Lisa. "This is for you," I said. Then I turned to Michelle and handed her a second envelope. "I thought you should know too." The room went dead silent as they opened their respective evidence packages. Lisa's face turned white and Dan started mumbling something about how, "This isn't what it looks like." Classic. I took a deep breath and addressed the group. For months, Lisa and Dan have been having an affair. I've kept quiet while I gathered evidence, but I can't live like this anymore. Lisa, I've already filed for divorce and custody arrangements for Ethan have been made. I'll be moving out tomorrow. Lisa burst into tears and accused me of being cruel. "You didn't have to do this in front of everyone," she sobbed. Dan, meanwhile, tried to make a quiet exit, but Michelle stopped him by slapping him so hard, the room collectively winced. One of our friends whispered, "This is the best dinner party ever." After the dinner party, my life felt like it had been dropped into a blender. Once everyone left, Lisa tried to corner me for a private conversation. I let her talk because, honestly, I wanted to see what excuse she'd come up with. Predictably, it was a mix of crocodile tears and textbook cheater rhetoric. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she wailed. "You've been so distant lately, and I was lonely." "Distant?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Lisa, I'm not the one who's been sneaking out to the Hilton with Dan and playing Lady and the Tramp with fries in a parking lot." She had no answer for that one. Instead, she pivoted to, think of Ethan. How could you humiliate me like that in front of everyone? Humiliate you? Lisa, I kept my mouth shut while you humiliated me for months. I've been living in the Twilight Zone and you're upset I didn't handle it with enough tact? She stormed off to the bedroom in a huff, which was fine by me. I grabbed a beer, sat on the couch, and scrolled through my phone. Michelle, bless her soul, had texted me. Thank you for telling me. I'm at my sister's place now. If you need anything, let me know. I replied, you too. Sorry you had to find out like that, but you deserve to know. The next day, I packed a bag and moved into a small apartment I'd already lined up. Lisa cried as I left, but I didn't stick around to comfort her. I felt bad for Ethan, but I knew I couldn't stay in a toxic environment just to pretend everything was fine. For the first few weeks, Lisa went full damage control mode. She texted me constantly, oscillating between tearful apologies and passive-aggressive barbs. One moment it was, I'll do anything to fix this. And the next it was, well, maybe if you'd been more affectionate, I wouldn't have felt so neglected. I ignored most of it. I wasn't about to play her game. Instead, I focused on Ethan, who was surprisingly resilient through it all. I made sure he knew he wasn't to blame for anything and kept our time together as fun and normal as possible. We built Legos, had movie nights, and even tried baking cookies. Spoiler, I'm a terrible baker. Eventually, Lisa got desperate and escalated her tactics. She showed up at my apartment unannounced one day, holding a casserole dish like we were starring in some kind of bad rom-com. I made your favorite, she said with a forced smile, holding out the dish like it was a peace treaty. Lisa, unless that casserole can undo months of lies and infidelity, I think I'll pass, I said, holding the door firmly. She tried to push her way in, but I stood my ground. You don't get to waltz in here and act like nothing happened. Work on yourself, Lisa. I'll let you know when Ethan's ready to see you. I shut the door before she could respond. As for Dan? Oh, he didn't get off easy. Michelle filed for divorce almost immediately after the dinner party. Turns out I wasn't the only one with evidence. She'd been suspicious for a while and had her own receipts. To add insult to injury, Dan got written up at work for unprofessional conduct after someone, not me but maybe Michelle, anonymously forwarded the PI's report to HR. The last I heard, Dan was couch surfing at a buddy's place and complaining that no one understands how complicated relationships are. Yes, Dan, the human embodiment of a soggy napkin, had the audacity to act like he was the victim. Fast forward a few months. I'm settling into single dad life. It's not always easy, but it's infinitely better than living in a web of lies. Lisa and I communicate only when it's about Ethan, and even then I keep it short and professional. She's still trying to win me back, but I've made it clear there's no coming back from what she did. Michelle and I have kept in touch as co-survivors of the Dan and Lisa disaster. We even grabbed coffee once just to check in. Nothing romantic. It's more like a camaraderie born from mutual betrayal. She's doing well, by the way. She's moving out of state for a fresh start, and I'm genuinely happy for her. As for me, I've started therapy to work through everything and make sure I'm in a good place for Ethan. I've even dipped my toes into the dating pool again. It's weird, but also exciting. The best part? I feel free. For the first time in years, I'm not walking on eggshells or second-guessing everything, and that, my friends, is worth all the drama. AITA for how I handled things back then? Maybe, but looking back, I don't regret it one bit.